What did you see, Clarice? What did you see?
Lambs. They were screaming.
They were slaughtering the spring lambs.
They were screaming.
If you get on Google right now and ask for lists of the best films of the 90s, chances are you're going to encounter The Silence of the Lambs on every single one of them. I've been meaning to see it for a long time because I just had to find out why everyone agreed it was so good. However, I just never got around to it until I found out it was being screened in 35 millimeters in January. So I did it. I finally saw The Silence of the Lambs, and I am so happy I'm in the club now. So, in this video, I'm going to talk about what makes me believe the movie is so good and where I think it kind of dropped the ball. So, I'm going to start with a little synopsis of the film, then I'm going to get into my impressions of it, and I'm going to end by pushing things a little further to understand what kind of legacy the film has left. The Silence of the Lambs is an American psychological thriller from 1991 directed by Jonathan Demme. At the beginning of the film, we learn there's a serial killer named Buffalo Bill on the loose, whom the FBI is having a terrible time stopping. Jack Crawford, the man responsible for the behavioral science unit of the FBI, tasks a young trainee named Clarice Starling to study Dr. Hannibal Lecter. He's a brilliant ex-psychiatrist, unfortunately turned violent cannibal, currently serving time at a highly guarded mental facility for criminals. Although Crawford makes it seem like a simple behavioral study opportunity for Clarice, he secretly hopes that she, who is a young and beautiful woman, will be what it takes to get helpful information from Lecter regarding Buffalo Bill. Given Lecter's past as a psychiatrist, Crawford hopes to get him to psychoanalyze Buffalo Bill because he might have been one of his old patients. We learned that Lecter's victims of choice were usually women, and he hadn't seen one in a long time given the conditions of his incarceration. Upon her initial visit to the facility, Clarice introduces herself to Lecter and tries to initiate a casual conversation. However, Lecter, who is highly intelligent, uncovers Crawford's tactic and becomes hostile. He sends her away, but she perseveres, and over the course of several days, she's able to obtain some clues from Lecter, but only after she has provided him personal information about herself. What unfolds during the rest of the film's runtime is a thrilling dance between Clarice and Lecter to find out how to stop Buffalo Bill from killing his latest victim, which he plans on skinning alive the same way he has with his previous victims to make himself a skin suit. It took me far too long to see this film, but you know what they say, better late than never, because I thoroughly enjoyed myself. I was locked in from the beginning to the end thanks to Anthony Hopkins' stellar performance. I genuinely believe the film's huge success is in huge part due to him. Now, I don't know what kind of financial situation he was in when they offered him the role, but boy, he played like rent was due. He played like the bill collector was at the door knocking day and night, keeping him from sleeping. Like, oh, I j- he played that role a little too well. And if I were to walk down the street and come across him, I fear I'd have to get on the other side of the street because it was a little too convincing for me. A little too convincing. But truthfully, the role of a lifetime, incredible performance. Shout out to Anthony Hopkins. In terms of plot, there is so much happening at once that there's virtually no time for you to mentally check out. There's a whole thing with Buffalo Bill, the whole thing with Hannibal Lecter, and then there's also underlying tension regarding Clarice dealing with misogyny and paternalism because she's trying to climb the ranks in a men's world. In terms of filmmaking techniques, I really love the way the tension was maintained throughout certain scenes with handheld camera work and contrasted with more static camera work. The actors also often played directly to the camera, and it made the audience feel like it was a part of the film. Still regarding tension, there is one scene in which Hannibal Lecter is brought to Washington to meet with a senator, and as they find themselves in a hangar, they use the sound of the planes to score the scene and induce tension, which is really, really effective. I loved it. I also love the way they edited the moment Clarice met Buffalo Bill and the FBI broke into the wrong house. They made incredible use of parallel editing, and once again, I was logged in. Now, with all that being said, although Anthony Hopkins' performance totally sold Hannibal Lecter as a frightening individual, I wish we had more opportunities to understand the scale of his psychological prowesses. Jack Crawford explicitly asks Clarice not to share any details about her personal life with Lecter because he'll definitely use them against her. But she does, and the consequences are quite underwhelming. Now, I understand that Lecter has a soft spot for Clarice, but before anything, he's a ruthless killer, and I wish they drove that home. The only time they give us a glimpse into his ability to inflict psychological distress onto others is when he convinced Miggs, another criminal, to die by suicide by choking on his own tongue. Yikes. Now, I wanted more of that because the gore and the physical violence, we see that all the time and it gets old. But convincing someone to die by suicide by choking on their own tongue, that's what gets me going. I wanted more of that. That aside, at some occasions, I truly felt like I had to suspend my disbelief really hard in order to understand what the hell was going on. For example, Lecter succeeded in stealing Dr. Chilton's pen, which he later used to escape. Now, it's really unbelievable to me because he was completely tied up and the pen was at a certain distance on a bed. And the camera kept going back and forth between his face and the pen, just hinting at the fact that something was going to happen. But then the camera just cut it, things just cut to the following scene, and they didn't show us how he stole the pen. He just did. And I think I don't like when filmmakers do that. I think it's really cowardly because it's so illogical that they're not able to justify it and choose to leave it up to the audience's imagination. I guess we're just meant to assume he's God, and I don't like that much. I don't like that because the suspension of my disbelief has its limits. So, yeah, I wasn't a fan of that. Thinking about the film's cultural legacy, I think given art's incredible ability at shaping the way we think and feel about any given subject, it's always worth noting how individuals who are not cisgender heterosexual white men are depicted. I think this film succeeds at not offering a flat depiction of women as powerless individuals because they are both the hunter and the prey. Buffalo Bill hunts and kills women to make himself a skin suit. Hannibal Lecter's victims of choice are women, and Clarice has to live with the misogyny and paternalism she is routinely subjected to on the job. Clarice is nonetheless also the heroine of the story as she becomes the hunter and ultimately survives her encounters with violent criminals almost unscathed. I also appreciated the fact that they didn't waterboard us with graphic scenes of Buffalo Bill's victims being tortured the way they could have. The one thing that made me raise my eyebrows was related to Buffalo Bill's motive. It's revealed that he kidnaps women and murders them to use their skin. And Hannibal Lecter says Bill is someone who doesn't like the skin he's in, but was denied sex reassignment surgery several times because he is too violent. That makes his motive based on gender identity, and I think that sort of depiction can easily further transphobic beliefs. It's said later in the film that Bill just hates himself and doesn't necessarily want to be a woman, but it happens a little too late as the audience has been given an hour and a half to make all sorts of assumptions. All right, so those are my thoughts. Regardless of its few shortcomings, I think The Silence of the Lambs remains a great thriller worthy of being seen. And I really want to know, have you seen the film? What do you think about it? Let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching. Bye.